Rebonjour. OK, dans le dernière vidéo, j'ai beaucoup parlé de révision du passé composé avec avoir et puis en petite introduction de ce leçon avec passé composé avec être. J'ai discuté les différences, le pourquoi derrière l'idée que quelques verbes sont conjugués avec être dans le passé composé. Maintenant, je vais parler du forme, ok? Je vais parler du forme du passé composé avec le verbe être. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the form, what it looks like, the passé composé with the auxiliary verb être. And I've put the formula here, okay, as I did in the last chapters. You can see that I've underlined, we're using être as the auxiliary verb from in this chapter. That's our focus. And then, that doesn't affect the past participle, right? If it's a regular ER verb, it's going to follow the kind of rule of dropping the ER, adding the E with the accent aigu. Same with if it ends in an IR, you add the I. If it ends in an RE, you add a U. So the past participle part does not change. That is how you form that is based upon the verb, the verb that really describes the action. Regarde mes exemples. Regarde mes exemples. Et puis, je veux que vous regardez et puis vous questionnez un peu. OK. Elle est arrivée. Elle est arrivée. Elle est arrivée. Note bien que être, okay, so this ends with a T, so I'm going to make a liaison here. Elle est arrivée. Okay, she arrived. Nous sommes allés. Ça termine avec un S, ça commence avec une voyelle. Nous sommes allés, OK? Nous sommes allés. Et puis, disparaître. OK. Les filles sont rentrées. Les filles sont rentrées. The girls came back. Okay, the girls returned. What do you notice about the past participle in all of these examples? Notice what I have underlined. Oui, il y a des lettres supplémentaires. So if you look at the extra letters that I have added to the past participle, look at the subject of each sentence. Do you understand why I have added those? Okay, let's keep going here. So when you have être as the auxiliary, okay, le participe passé, the past participle, must agree in gender with the subject. Elle est arrivée. Okay, she arrived. Notice there's an extra E. Why? Because elle is the subject, féminin. Okay, this is the same as when we used adjectives, right? When we're describing someone, elle est américaine. She is American. All right, so if we're describing someone using être, we have to have agreement. Another issue with the past participle is that le participe passé must agree in number with the subject. Nous sommes restés à la maison. We stayed at home. Nous, c'est pluriel. Because nous is plural, we have to have an S at the end of rester. Okay? In the same way, if we were saying, we are happy, nous sommes contents, we have to have an S on content. You will not always hear these, right? Elle est arrivée. If I'm speaking, you don't know if there's an X. Well, you do because you know elle, but arrivé, if I just say it alone, you don't know if there's one E or two because of that accent. So this is a spelling thing. It's a spelling thing that can affect pronunciation. And this is really, to be honest, kind of a snob factor of French in knowing when to add these E's and S's. And if you're someone that likes puzzles and likes to kind of check things off a checklist and do this, you will get this very quickly and you will love it. If you are someone that hates things like this, just know that it will come with time. The more you see it, the more you practice it, the better you'll get at it. Okay. So, again, going back to which verbs do you need to worry about um, doing this agreement thing? Because you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the killer on the test. And sometimes it can be, okay, depending on what kind of teacher you have or what the focus of a particular unit is. La bonne nouvelle est que il y a seulement 17 verbes. Okay, so there's only 17 verbs that you're going to have to worry about with this. All right. So, just to lay it all out there again, there are a couple different ways to remember which verbs take être in the past tense. My preferred method of remembering this is called la maison d'être, the house of être. Why is this my preferred way? Because it actually illustrates the meaning of the verbs, which goes to the heart of why you should use être to begin with. And it really helps you kind of visualize what those verbs mean. Because in the end, it's more important that you communicate and try using the right verb to communicate. So I would be so happy if you added descendre to your vocabulary. Knowing that it's going to take some time to use it with the verb être in the passé composé, ça c'est normal. Okay. So voilà les 17 verbes. Okay. These are the 17 verbs um, that take être in the passé composé. Notice here, a couple of these. We have venir, revenir. So that's two. We have entrer, rentrer. That counts as two. Then we have né from the verb naître, to be born, and mort, to die, from the verb mourir. Okay, so this gets them all done. All right. The other way, which is good if you just want to cram and memorize, is La Famille van der Tramp. Dr. A. Mrs. P. Van der Tramp. So if you were to memorize that, that also is all of the 17 verbs that take être in the passé composé. So whatever works for you, at some point you're going to want to memorize them. Probably not this trimester, but well, definitely not this trimester. But I had to memorize them. To be honest, you've the ones that you use the most or read the most are the ones that are going to stick in your memory. That's why I like La Maison d'Être, because it makes more sense. You can actually see, the person doing all these things, and it goes back to the idea of movement and action. And of course, there's lots of verbs in the French language that have to do with movement and action that don't take être. So this is just one way to organize them. There's more grammatic detail as to why they take être, but this is a good way to get started, to dip your toes in. So speaking of dipping our toes in, we are only going to focus on 5 verbes qui prennent être dans le passé composé. Okay, we're just going to stick with five of those 17. So we've got aller, we've got arriver, we've got rentrer, rester, et venir. All right, so we know aller and venir are irregular verbs in the present. The good news for you is that aller is actually a regular past participle. So aller is actually pretty easy, and then venir is a little bit different. So voilà. Quelques verbes conjugués avec être au passé composé. So aller goes to aller. You drop the ER and you add E avec accent aigu. Arriver, même chose. Rentrer, rester. Okay, so those first 4 are really easy to form the past participle. You can really just focus on making sure you're conjugating être correctly, that you're doing the agreement with gender and number with the subject when you write out the past participle. The one that's irregular is venir, okay? So even though it does end in IR, it's not a regular IR verb. So, of course, the past participle is going to be different. It's venu, okay? Venu. So again, just remember that when you're using être in the passé composé, the past participles have to agree in gender and number with the subject. So you could end up with these kind of combinations. Here's aller as an example. Je suis allé. If I'm speaking, I'm going to add that extra E. Okay. If Pierre is talking about himself, he's not. All right. So depending on if your subject is singular or plural, masculine or feminine, you're going to end up adding some extra letters. Now, vous is kind of a fun one because what does vous mean? Right, it means you formal, or it means you all, you talking to a group. So depending on who you're speaking to, it could be singular where you add nothing. You could be talking to, maybe you're talking to me. Okay, so then you would add an extra E. If you're talking to a group of girls, you would add ES. Okay, so it can get kind of fun if you like the spelling thing. All right, so just something to watch out for. All right, so these are some examples. Ils sont tous dans le livre. Okay, ils sont tous dans le livre des autres phrases. Sometimes it's kind of helpful to read different sentences. So, l'auxiliaire être. Jean-Paul est allé au cinéma. Okay, John Paul went to the movies. And then the next example, Mélanie est allée à la plage. Melanie went to the beach. So they both translate as went, but because Mélanie dans la deuxième phrase est une fille, tu ajoutes un e. Okay. Eric et Patrick sont allés en ville. Eric and Patrick went downtown or went into town. Mes copines sont allées à la campagne. My friends, my girlfriends, copines, okay, friends that are girls, sont allées à la campagne. So because this is feminine here and plural, you're going to add an extra E and an extra S. Okay? Voilà. Okay, encore des exemples. J'ai pris ça aussi du livre. Okay, so this is just like a more kind of redundant example from the book compared to my, slide a couple previous. So when you're talking about, so we have côté masculin, côté mixte, côté féminine, okay, les filles. So for a group of girls, moi et ma mère, nous sommes allés, okay? If I'm talking about moi et mes frères, nous sommes allés. Okay, so remember, all you need is one guy to make it just, a group, you add S. If you have a group of girls, ES. Okay, the negative, c'est le même. Okay, there's no change in how you make the negative. The ne pas always goes around the auxiliary, always goes around the conjugated verb. Okay, and then interrogatif. Okay, comment faire une question? Est-ce que tu es allé? So, est-ce que, always the same ways to make a question. Est-ce que, intonation, tu es allé, or inversion, es-tu allé? So if you do inversion, it's always the conjugated verb, in this case, the auxiliary, that goes first. Okay? So the main thing to remember, le formule. Le formule, formule, formule. All right? So you're going to have always this formula with the passé composé. When we're talking about être, these are the auxiliary. Okay, so now we're really going back and reviewing avoir and être. And then you're going to have these past participles. And depending on what your subject is, you are going to either add an extra E or an extra S or nothing at all. Okay, so you really have to pay attention to the subject of the sentence. Okay, so just a review of what our goals are for this chapter. We're still working with the passé composé. This time we're using être as the auxiliary verb. So this is going to make us identify and correctly conjugate être. This is review, review, review. And then we're just going to focus on 5 verbs that take être in the past tense, in the passé composé. If you want to go further, take note of those other verbs that take être, and we'll cover those in more detail in a future class. Okay, bon courage.